Waste management. Coder hit his desk angrily with his paw, which made Torik's blood drain from his face. Shit, there we go again. The fleet admiral looked very pissed. Torik looked down, his hands shaking, not even trying to keep his composure anymore. I know bloody well what happened on your ship, Captain Torik. Or should I say, now, Insane Torik. I have read the reports. My superiors have read the report. Everyone has read the bloody report. It's all over the news, and we're the laughing stock of the whole galaxy. Now, for the last time, I want you to explain it to me, in details, without trying to gloss over. You're not saving your ass. You're way beyond that. Torik slowly looked up, his eyes wet with fear secretions, and started telling his story for the 100th time. When we learned that a group of humans was to be embedded in our crew, we swiftly made our due diligence. No glossing over, interjected Coder, showing his upper fangs and growling quietly. We sent our science team on a quest to find as much information as possible on human needs and air cohabitation challenges. But as you know, sir, the whole thing was rushed. We had very little time to adapt the ship systems, and very little information to work with. Coder's gaze was as hard as crystalline rock. Torik's whining made him angry. Torik paused for a second, trying to catch his breath, but his lungs felt numb. He swallowed some saliva, loudly, then continued. We sent human biological parameters to the team responsible for biological adaptation. We have a small team of xenobiologists, sir. The whole thing was rushed. They came back with a list of standard recommendations. Humans are carbon-based, oxygen-dependent creatures who can live just fine within our ship's standardized habitat. They require just 20% oxygen for their gaseous exchanges, and they have very little tolerance for CO2. They can live with higher oxygen levels, so we left the atmospheric controls unchanged and added just a little bit of water vapor to... Coder's face twisted into a sardonic smile. You don't have to explain to me how to make a Boapec cake. As the saying goes, tell me how you serve your guest, not how you put the icing on the cake. Food metaphors. Coder must be beyond furious. Torik paused again to wipe some glistening droplets of fear secretions away from his whiskers, a gesture indicating retreat from a fight in any normal setting. But no retreat was possible from Coder's gaze, so he swallowed his saliva and kept going. We adapted the cleaning room apparatuses to add artificial waterfall showers that humans seem to like very much. And we added so-called swivel chairs in all meeting rooms, 3D printed from a model we found in a human cultural repository called Walmart. Then it hit us. What hit you? Waste management. We have a dozen different species on board, and they all produce waste, of course. The Forii have a complex set of skin folds diffusing waste molecules into their environment, which is why they wear a scrub suit at all times when on board a Federation vessel. The Nerms have hard shells covering their whole body, and their waste slowly accumulates in a neutral colloid solution which they expel only once a year in a waste pouch. In fact, I don't think we even have a facility for humans. Focus on humans. So, yes, sir. Humans. We had a dozen humans coming on board, and we started calculating their waste products and deciding on a management strategy. Their standard waste elimination apparatus, which they call the flush toilet, would generate way too much volume. We devised a more efficient, but still comfortable, waste extraction apparatus. We also figured they could just empty their bladder fluid into a dry funnel. Their waste fluid is not a big concern, and we discovered that we can extract useful nitrogen from it to boost vegetable production for our vegetarian crew. Again, Torik, I don't care about the icing. We then discovered that the major challenge would be to handle the solid waste. A challenge? With humans? You don't say, Coder hissed, rolling his eyes and retracting his whiskers, making sure his body language was the very expression of contempt. Torik sighed discreetly and continued. Humans produce quite a lot of solid waste, 10 times more waste than any other species we have on board. In fact, they seem to produce a never-ending string of solid waste, air, packages, and they have to go quite often to the disposal unit, at least once per human cycle, we were told. Some humans even use this time to read the news or play networked video games while sitting on the disposal unit, which is something nobody in their right mind would ever consider doing. You know how we, for instance, take waste disposal very seriously. Sir, don't they have any pride? This is appalling. Some of them spent quite a lot of time doing that. One of the humans was even singing popular music at times. Anyway, as the ship's adaptation went, we had to increase the number of waste disposal stations on the ship, from 4 to 26, making sure humans were never more than 30 beeps away from one, anywhere on the ship. And we had to completely redesign the cargo hold area to fit a much bigger waste material holding tank. This time, it was Coder who sighed. Keep going. We thought we had everything right. The lighting had been adapted to please the human senses, since they have quasi-nocturnal vision and tolerate less lighting than most species. The crew had been given the standardized nanovaccines against other species' pathogens, and we had the real-time translators set up in no time. Then, 1 week into our voyage, Torek stopped and looked down, trying to find his words. One of our engineers came back to the bridge with a puzzling report. The waste tank pressure was higher than projected. We ran some tests, but found out that the solid matter level was within normal range, considering all parameters. But still, pressure was climbing. Coder frowned, then pulled his tablet, swiped a few times, and checked a report. Yes, I have your engineer's report here. The pressure buildup was linear, and it had started on day 1, but your waste management engineers chose not to report it. Torek ignored Coder's comment and continued with his report. On day 20, the tank was only 10% full according to solid waste level sensors, but pressure had reached critical levels. One of our engineers, Taupak, suggested that the pressure sensor, which is a single sensor with no redundancy, must be faulty. We agreed to turn off the sensor and have the whole waste tank replaced at our next stop. Except that, we didn't make it that far. The waste tank exploded. The waste tank bloody exploded, repeated Coder. And why is that so? Torek, can you explain it to me as if I was a pup out of his egg sack? We didn't know at the time, but human solid waste is active. Humans are a highly symbiotic species with a complex internal ecosystem. They're literally full of bacteria. They're walking cesspools. Torek stopped, wondering if his last comments had been too harsh, but Coder let him continue. When the tank ruptured, the whole cargo area and the 3 lower decks were contaminated with solid particles. Toxic methane gas flowed into the atmospheric control system, destroying the delicate gas exchange membranes. We nearly had to abandon ship, but then the whole crew managed to gather into the emergency chambers, where an autonomous life support system kept them alive until help arrived. We were then ferried to a quarantine facility on Sirius Roman 3, while a special team in hazmat suits decontaminated the ship. Tell me, Torek, do you understand why exactly the tank ruptured? Do you know what you could have done to prevent this? Torek opened his mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. I now know what happened. Human engineers explained to us that human solid waste is not only active, but it also acts as a bioreactor. I won't go into the technical details because, quite frankly, I am not sure I understood everything, but there are complex biochemical reactions resulting in the emission of large amounts of methane gas. Combined with other species' waste products which are rich in carbohydrates, the human waste bioreactor went into overdrive. This is what ruptured the waste tank on the ship. Now, what could have we done better? At the time, we had no idea, and I had not received the memo. You had received the memo, Torek. You just didn't read it. I had not grasped the memo's importance. Sadly, we could have treated active human waste with UV radiation, or we could have cryo-freezed it, which seems to be the preferred approach now in Federation ships. Using a separate tank, we could have then transferred the waste products to the nearest human colony, where it would have been recycled as fertilizer. So tell me, Torek, How did the humans manage to live for 5 days in the emergency chambers without any working waste management units at their air disposal? One of them was an engineer. He immediately started designing a small, simple waste containment unit, which was then 3D printed within the hour. The 12 humans used it for 5 days, and sometimes there was quite the lineup. Some made jokes about a learning process for their pups they call potty training. These crafty humans stored their waste into small bags with zippers, which they shoved into a food freezer. And what did they call this improvised waste management unit? Torek. A porta potty, sir.